Good night everyone and welcome back to the Nocturnal Corner with Bat, and in today's Epic Weapon Showcase we are going to be looking at the King Mine Layer. So let's get into the positives and the drawbacks of this thing. And it does have a good number of positives to it. Has a decent splash, it is a kind of a launch and forget type of weapon, and it can actually do a lot of damage while also being actually surprisingly durable with a low energy income and not too heavy on any type of build you decide to use. So let's go down the line in that category. So, first up, this is a weapon that is going to require ammo, and it's actually one of the higher ammo-based weapons at 16. Now, you might actually go through your ammo a little quick, and that's only because you might have to launch a few other mines, but we'll get into that when we get into the cons. But the first positive is it does have a decent amount of ammo. The second positive is going to be the explosive damage. This thing, it's basically, think of a shotgun type of thing where the closer you get, the more damage it's going to do. And basically, it's going to have a decent radius in that splash because it is something you're going to have to drop and the enemy's going to have to get close to it. So this thing has the potential of doing actually high damage and can get that blast damage pretty deep in somebody's build if you're fortunate enough. The third positive is going to be the fire rate. This thing basically goes cha-chunk, cha-chunk, cha-chunk. It's actually pretty fast, and that's usually why you're going to see this thing mixed in with a hadron cabin, so that way anything like cannons or fortunes or whatever other type of thing needs to reload, they usually will put the king for that low energy drain, and it's going to definitely boost it in that perk. So, the next positive, and this is going to be a little strange, but this thing only has 400 durability. However, I guess it's mainly because you're going to be doing a playstyle where you're running around, dodging, whatnot, but when you're actually getting shot, this thing feels kind of durable. Even when you're, like, positioned, like, so say, like, you crash into a wall or something, and the enemy is coming over and they're shooting you and whatnot, this thing actually feels like it can survive a decent amount of hits before it can actually fall off. So that's kind of weird to me, especially since the whirl is like is 480, so it's about double the amount of this thing, but the whirl feels like it pops off a lot easier. Another benefit to that is maybe it's because you can build around this thing, and because of the weird shape and whatnot of it, maybe players might think it's a piece of armor, because really, since it's dropping mines, there's not going to be any muzzle flash, there's not going to be a laser indicator or whatnot. It's just going to be this little disc that pops out, so it can kind of get hidden in your build, which further increases the survivability of this weapon when you're driving around. So getting on to our next positive is that 3 energy drain. You can have up to 5 of these bad boys on there, but usually people run 4 and a few modules, or 4 in like a cap can, or 3 in a cap can, so on. So the energy drain is actually pretty good when it comes to this thing. Now the mass is 540, but it's not too bad. That's actually surprisingly light, and it can work with basically any build. Usually if you want to go fast, it can work with a light build, or if you want to go heavy, obviously you can work with a heavy build. So these landmines, they actually have another positive to their own, and it's not going to be like the landmines you see in raids. These are actually going to look the same and everything with the little red flashing light, but they're basically the bouncing betties from Call of Duty. So think of it, when the enemy comes into its proximity, these things will actually jump up in the air and explode. So it's good for hovers, and it's actually has some good stripping capabilities. So say if they come in there with a machine gun, shotgun, whatever, these things will actually jump up in the air and explode, doing splash damage to those weapons. But if the enemy happens to drive over it and it jumps up and explodes underneath the vehicle, you basically are going to be doing kind of like a critical hit in a way, because it's just focusing all that blast damage underneath its vehicle, and it's going to show that you can actually potentially do a very high amount of damage with this weapon. And finally, the last positive is, if you're going to be using this thing to secure an area, you will notice that these will stay on the map rather long. It is going to be 60 seconds to be exact, and since the games are like 5 minutes long, and you're probably going to be dropping a few of these here and there trying to reposition where you want them, they're probably never going to actually blow up on you unless you're kind of really thinking over your strategy and hiding somewhere with your team. So those are going to be all our positives. The negatives. So this thing, instead of being kind of like the fuse drone, the grenader, whatnot. This is going to be built vertically, so it might be a little bit more awkward to build around. If you're doing low power score, people might not even try to build around it. This side, the top, and right over here is all buildable, but this whole front right here, you can't actually build it. There is no weld points on that area, so keep that in mind. It kind of sucks, but if you can work around it, you can work around it. Another negative is basically going to be the mine itself, to where yes, you can try to position them like so they fire underneath your build and you don't have to worry about them getting peeled off by enemies shooting at you and whatnot. However, if you do such things and you make like a hard turn or whatnot, or if there's another structural part under there, these discs can actually get stuck to your vehicle or stuck in your wheel, and they'll actually go launch somewhere that you might not want them to actually go. And if they do get stuck, they actually have this weird tendencies to glide against the ground like if they're a hockey puck. So if you have 4 of these, you might have 3 where you launched it, and you might have 1 just like tailing you and deployed somewhere else. And if it's stuck on you for too long, it's just going to detonate, and it won't hurt you in any way. It's just going to break the mine itself. Another negative is you can only have 2 per king. So if you have 4, you can have 8. If you have 5, you can have 10, etc. And basically that means is if you launch one, you launch another, and then if you try to launch a third, you're gonna break not the last one, but the first one you launched. So you got to keep that in mind. You can't just pepper the battlefield in landmines, which as nice as that would be, sadly I guess that's their way of balancing this weapon. Alright, so another negative is actually the durability itself. Basically your builds and everything is good and everything, but since this is a more tall type of weapon, it can get hit fairly easily if you get stuck or if you get cap canned or whatnot. So yes, it how do I say it? It weirdly feels rather durable, but because of the size of it, it's a big target if the enemy knows what they're looking for, so that is a negative. Another negative, and this is kind of something that I've noticed, is if you get pinned or if you're just dropping mines all around you and whatnot, it'll definitely feel like you're doing more damage to yourself. You got to be really careful when you ram, and that's because if you ram and that player's weight gets onto your vehicle, you're most likely going to either slow down or you're going to get stuck, and you're definitely going to be hurting yourself a lot more with this weapon than other people. And that kind of gets to our last negative that I can think of off the top of my head right now, and that is the deployment time of this thing is straight ass. And I think it's because this thing used to be rather powerful before, but now you can just so easily chase a mine layer, and you can drive past the landmines because their deployment is just, it's pretty slow. So if you want to be an aggressive mine layer and run in there and try to hit them and whatnot, a lot of the times you won't do shit because the deployment time will not just go off and hit the enemy. So you can drive underneath a hover, deploy your mines underneath that hover, and then you can turn around and the hover, because you hit it, he's obviously going to move unless he's a bot, and you're not going to do nothing and your mines are just going to sit there. So that actually makes me think of the last negative that I can think about this weapon, and it seems more apparent than you actually realize, is that these will show up on radars. So the enemy will see exactly where your mines are on their mini-map, and since these things have a red light on them, I think it's actually a little bit brighter than the red light you would see on the Whirl. They kind of basically show themselves off to the enemy, and they're rather easily avoidable. You will always kind of notice these mines unless you're really not paying attention, and they're honestly kind of easy to avoid. Usually people will try to play the aggressive route, but when you do that, you're just I forgot to say the word, but you're just basically causing yourself to take a whole lot of damage, and it just kind of sucks when you're getting shot at by all these people. And if you try to play defensive, it's really boring, because you're just basically trying to figure out a strategic area that you want to place your mines and try to basically block off like that valley, or you know, like, see, you know how there's like multiple like points that you can go through. They have all the ridges and whatnot that a dog can sneak through, or say a bridge or whatnot. But if there's multiple enemies coming, it's not going to be doing a whole lot to all of them. It's just going to basically do maybe a whole lot to one of them. Your best bet and the most effective things that I've seen for this weapon is to play a light build, so like something fast at a low power score. These mines will do greatly at that low power score, and you'll notice a good decent amount of damage, especially since nobody has a whole lot of health back down there. Or you want to play as a heavy build, where you're going to be using your heavy cabins and maybe some Bigfoots and whatnot, something that can really tow an enemy with the harpoon, and you're basically going to drag them towards your side and have them pull through the landmines. But however, you got to kind of keep in mind that if they're really, really light and they're just basically flailing on your fucking harpoon, they can avoid the landmines, especially since the deployment time will just let them hover over it. And it's so bad that you see your landmines and he's coming over, he'll go right over top of them and nothing will happen. It's really shitty. So really the best thing for that is if you got like a slow tug, so say they're a little heavy and you're tugging them with you, you can drag them that way. Or you could try to preemptively lay your mines down, then grab him and drag him through your already made minefield, and you will notice that you will do a hell of a lot of damage that way. So those are my recommendations. So now I'm going to just show it off a little bit. You can see it's a tall boy. It's going to be a little awkward to build around. You can see the weld points, none on the front, and usually people are going to try to build all around this to try to hide it in there. You just got to worry about this little piece right here. That's all you got to really worry about, because they're just going to fall to the ground. And now you can basically see that these things have a rather decent fire rate. And you see right there how it kind of hovers over. And now you see, you can only have 2 of these at a time. And even though it looks like it's hitting the ground and it's ready to go, you see that red light? See now that it's blinking? That basically showing you that this thing has a rather slow activation time, and it can get you in a lot of bad situations. Damage wise, this thing can be rather effective. It can peel off weapons, it can peel off wheels, it can be a good weapon at any power score, even high power score. But at higher power scores, it's going to be a lot tougher, like especially. And that even in that medium area, so say if you're trying to go like around 6 to 10, it might be a bit of a painful time there as well. And that's why I'm saying maybe low power score with a light build, or a very heavy build at high power score that you can actually drag them. And that's basically my experience trying to use this weapon, that I was just having a horrendous time just actually trying to work with this thing. Maybe I just have a skill issue. I see people play this thing rather effectively, and if you actually drive through those landmines, you could really screw yourself up. Or if an enemy drives through them, he can get really screwed up, and you can actually almost just completely take out a dude right off the bat with this weapon. So the damage potential is there, but the skill and the strategic know-how and just all around just basically getting lucky with this thing is the big drawback with it. And in a way, it just kind of felt boring. It felt really hard to actually do decent, and most games are going to be like, if you care about score, maybe 600 or less. I was getting a lot of like 400 points on the scoreboard. Anyways, now saying all that, you can take my opinion with a grain of salt, however you want to look at it, but that's just how I felt about that weapon. And in today's showcase with the actual builds, I'm only going to be playing as 2. I'm going to be playing as Gotcha by Undisputed Gunner and Mines by Hebus 007. The first one's going to be, I believe it's going to be Mines? I don't know. I think it's going to be this one. I kind of forgot. Sorry. But it's not going to be exactly like this. I took off the Maxwell on the back. I didn't really feel like I needed it. And I also took off the cap can. So that way I'm running 3 kings instead of a cap can and a king, because I was just mainly trying to just do kings, but the rest of the build is going to be exactly the same without the radar and the cap can. Instead it's going to be 3 kings. This is rather fast, and since it has all those things in the front, this is going to be more of your rammer. But you got to try to keep in mind that if you're trying to kill them with your mines and you go and ram them, you could potentially just be knocking them out of the way of your mines, especially if they could still move. Obviously this bot is stationary, and you see right there how much damage I did to myself. But this is something you also kind of want to avoid. Okay, that's not what I meant. That's what I meant. Where if you're hitting something that's going to be a little bit stronger, you could basically position yourself like this, and you could be doing a hell of a lot more damage to yourself versus what happened to him. So going on to the other build is going to be Gotcha. This one is going to be more effective in that high power score with that harpoon. This one, I don't think this is the most effective harpoon mine layer out there. I know there's like a lot better ones. This is just kind of the first one I found. But it's not bad, you know. If you actually see those lower builds or bots or whatever, just pull them. And you can kind of see the issue I mean right there is the harpoon will kind of draw them into weird directions. And if you really want to do anything like effective, you're gonna have to go kind of like this. Get your minefield all ready to go. You want to maintain your speed, and you just kind of want to be a little careful and just drag them right through it. And that's going to be a very effective way to actually kill people with landmines. And you will also absolutely annoy the absolute fuck out of whoever you do it to, because trust me, it is a cancerous build when it works. Anyways, that's going to be our 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is going to be a little bit shorter. I apologize for that, but it was really hard for me to use this weapon. I guess I just don't have the skills for it. And if you enjoy this, I hope you might leave a like and subscribe for your boy. And I do hope all of you have a great night. I'll see you next time, Bat Colony. Peace. We got a pencil on our team. I was trying to look at the pencil, damn it. Wow. Not this time. Whoa, almost this time. Where's the enemy that has the landmines? right into the game, huh? Oh, come on. This game would allow it, you can get stuck on air. Actually, I have gotten stuck on air in this game. Multiple times. Here I was hoping to recognize it. Whatever works, man.